Well, good afternoon, everyone. We are live. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is our Facebook Live Q&A series. It's our Family Strong series. So thank you for taking your time out of your scrolling or your eating lunch to hear from a phenomenal local leader today. I'm Lindsay Keisler. We haven't had the privilege of meeting. I'm President and CEO of the Chamber of Catawba County. So humbled and privileged to be in this role and working with business and on behalf of business, and to get to do things like this, to put a local business leader in the spotlight, a legacy company, fifth generation company, actually, one of the founding partners of our Chamber of Commerce here, and it has certainly made a difference and an impact, significant impact on our community from a workforce perspective, but also an economic perspective. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsor. So our sponsor, Hickory Real Estate Group, has made this series possible. And so Mike Kelly, who's the owner, founder, broker of Hickory Real Estate Group, is on the line with us today. And I know he wants to say a couple words.
Hey, Lindsay, thanks for letting me say hello today. We really appreciate the fact that the Chambers created these series like this so we can learn more about the people that run the companies that have been so great in our area over the years. And, the family aspect of it, I think, is really, really interesting. And I think you've been able to draw that out really well so far. So just appreciate being able to be here. And just so everybody knows, Hickory Real Estate Group is a full service real estate company in our area. We help buyers and sellers, help people buy homes and help people sell homes. And if you want more information about us, you can follow us on Facebook or go to our website, hickoryrealestategroup.com. But thanks again, and look forward to watching this today.
Thanks, Mike. And I want to give you another shameless plug for your podcast. So tell them about your podcast.
Sure. So we do every few weeks or so, we do a little podcast. It's called the Real Hickory Podcast, where we try and talk to local people with a slant toward the real estate aspect. We've had people from the chamber, from the city of Hickory, mortgage lenders, and even other agents that'll talk about things going on in the real estate market and kind of how things affect people. And sometimes we go off script a little bit too, but we try and kind of keep it with a basis around real estate. So it's been, I think we have tens of people that listen to it and watch it. So,
I'm one of them.
No, I know, and I appreciate it. It's actually done pretty well. It's kind of like been a little bit of a hobby for me, but it's been a lot of fun to do it. So appreciate the shout out.
Well, Mike, thank you again for your sponsorship. Again, if you're just hopping on, you are tuning in to the Facebook Live Q&A series, the Family Strong series, and it's sponsored by Hickory Real Estate Group. So you just heard from Mike Kelly, the owner, broker of Hickory Real Estate Group. So we just thank him for his sponsorship. Those of you that are sitting there listening and you have tuned in and you're watching it live, go ahead and drop us a comment. Say hashtag live. Maybe you're watching the replay. You stopped in after this was over with and recorded, but you're catching the replay. Thank you for tuning in and taking time to listen to Stephen today. Go ahead and tell us hashtag replay so that we know you stopped by. Also, this is live. You can react to the things that we say today. So give us some likes, some hearts, some wow faces. If you like what Stephen has to say or myself, also comment, throw a comment out there or ask a question. So if you've always wanted to have a conversation with Stephen Shuford, now's your opportunity. You can ask Stephen a question. Don't make it too hard on him, okay? I'm sure he can handle it, but still. So thank you all for listening, and thank you for watching, and thank you for engaging with us. As you know, Facebook likes, their algorithms like when we have engagement on these videos. So I just want the most people to hear from Stephen as possible today. So please help us out. Help us out. Another way, this is a big way you can help us, is to share the video. Share the video or start a watch party so that your friends and followers can hear what Stephen has to say, right? So thank you for caring, and thank you for helping us out by sharing or commenting or reacting, engaging with this interview today. All right, so what is this? What's the point? What is the point of all this? Why have we done various series over the last several months? First of all, your chamber has shifted really hard into digital content, but we wanted to be strategic with utilizing our platforms. In this way has been extremely rewarding and inspiring for me. And I've heard from many of you that have commented and engaged on social media that you've enjoyed them too. And so this has been an opportunity to put a local face, a local business and community leader in front of you so you can hear, glean from their expertise, from their experience, from their leadership philosophy. You can be inspired, you can take heart and have some hope, but you can also hopefully learn about a local company. Learn about their culture, learn about what products they manufacture that supply the world, in this case today. And so this has been a great opportunity for us. This series in particular is the Family Strong series. So we have featured multiple businesses that have stood the test of time, first of all, multi-generational. They've invested in technology. They have invested in innovation. They have invested in their people, in their culture. And it has made them successful over multiple generations. And most importantly, they've invested in generational leadership. So this guest today, which I think I've already teased his name, this is a family-owned company in their 5th generation. And so today my guest is Stephen Shuford. He's the vice chairman, former CEO of STM Industries, which is the parent company of Shurtape Technologies. Stephen, thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely, Lindsay. Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So if you've never met Stephen, I want to give you a little bit of context to his bio. Stephen is an owner and 5th generation business leader at Shurtape Technologies LLC. He's served in various executive positions over his 23-year tenure with the company. Most recently, Mr. Shuford was elevated to the position of vice chairman of Shurtape's parent company, which is STM Industries, after having served as Shurtape's CEO for the 10 years prior. Shurtape is a global manufacturer of pressure-sensitive adhesive tapes that are used in various industrial packaging, construction, paint, and consumer and OEM applications. They're headquartered in Hickory. They operate 13 manufacturing, R&D, and distribution facilities worldwide, including 6 that are in Western North Carolina. Some of their brands, which I know if you've gone to any Lowe's, Home Improvement, you've gone to Home Depot or Walmart, or any other of even our local hardware stores, you've seen their brands, right? Shurtape, Duct Tape, T-Rex, and Frog Tape. So Stephen, again, thanks for being here. Thanks for your contribution to our community, to support of your chamber, and just being a great mentor to me in general.
Oh, you're nice to say that. Thanks again for having me.
Well, it's true. So now let's go into some rapid fire Q&A. This has been quite a treat to let our viewers know who you are at work, but also some personal things and what you're passionate about. So you ready for this?
Let's do it.
All right, let's go. What is the most important quality of leadership?
For me, promoting talent and leading by example with honesty and sincerity.
What is one cause that you're most passionate about?
I would say availability of economic opportunity, particularly to those that are socioeconomically disadvantaged.
What's something that most people would be surprised to know about you?
Probably that I'm naturally an introvert, so doing things like Facebook Live are quite a challenge for me.
I'm glad to pull you out of your box today. Who is a leader that you admire the most?
Well, in business, I'd have to say Warren Buffett for sure. More generally, certainly Nelson Mandela, Abe Lincoln are folks that come to mind.
Podcasts or books?
Books. I hadn't figured out podcasts yet.
All right. Well, okay. What was the last book you read?
Sort of random. I'm a nonfiction guy, and the last one I downloaded to my Kindle was the The Life and Times of Wild Bill Hickok.
All
believe it or not.
right.
So I got a
All
little,
right.
yeah, Western shootout going on. It was pretty fun.
I like it. All right. What's one word that you would use to describe the culture at Shurtape?
Transparent.
Mm. What is your personal mantra?
My personal mantra might be just do it. Don't procrastinate.
If you would give a TED Talk, what would it be about?
I think it would be about the importance of honesty, integrity, and sincerity when in a leadership role.
If you could have a 15-minute conversation with anyone, who would it be?
I might go back to my Warren Buffett and Abe Lincoln call there, depending on whether or not we're talking living or dead.
Those would be really, really good ones. When you're not at work, where can we find you?
Really good chance it would be on a river or a slope somewhere in Montana.
I like it. And if you could pick up a new skill in an instant, what would that be?
No question, guitar. I've
We have
struggled on the axe for forever. And if somebody could just wave the wand, boy, that'd be delightful.
We have had multiple guests.
Say that.
I would say the majority of our guests that I've asked that question, I don't always ask it, but
Hey,
have
guitar.
said they want to pick up a musical instrument. And
Yeah,
guitar
okay.
has been the most popular. Guitar has
Yeah.
been the most popular. Someone said ukulele because that seems to be easier, but for the ukulele players out there, it's not to be offensive, but but that's great. That's great. All right. Well, thank you for that. Thank you very much. All right. So Stephen, just a transition, I talked a little bit about Shurtape and STM. Why don't you do just a brief overview just for viewers that they maybe have passed by the headquarters in Hickory and they just aren't quite sure what goes on there. And they may have not noticed that we have several other facilities right here in our community. So just give a little overview.
So just kind of an overview of our current footprint and what they're seeing around them, or go all the way back to the beginning of time?
Well, let's do current footprint, then we'll go back to the beginning of time and move forward.
Right on, got it. So if you're, in and around our area, you'll pass some of our facilities. The one that a lot of you perhaps pass on the way to the Target, what have you, of course, is our headquarters building. We were once headquartered across the tracks, you might say, closer to our R&D center and a couple of our manufacturing plants. And we outgrew that facility. It's still there, of course, as an administrative facility. But I think our new building there, which, as many of you know, was a car dealership, it didn't quite make it through the Great Recession. As a result, we snapped it up, I want to say 2010, and then moved in around 2012. And that's where my senior leadership team is based, along with, accounting and IT and marketing and sales. Beyond that, we have our masking tape manufacturing facilities that are over on Highland Avenue that many of you have probably seen. Next to that, our R&D building, which is once actually a distribution center that we again outgrew. Which leads us to the next facility that you may have seen, which of course is down on 40, our new distribution center. Now on our second one, as we expanded by essentially moving right next door and are in the process of selling the old distribution center. So add to that our duct tape manufacturing facility, which is in Alexander County. And then we have a Caldwell County packaging tape plant. And I believe that mostly covers kind of the in and around NC. But we also have a significant footprint in Ohio due to an acquisition we made back in 2009.
Great.
And that's domestic. We could get into international if you want, but we may not have time.
No, that's really good. I think that just gives our viewers an overview, like you said, of our region and Shurtape's footprint and investment and continued investment here. Like you said, just as recent as I believe it was 2019 when you guys added the additional or announced you were adding the additional distribution center down in the town of Catawba.
Right. Yeah. We simply outgrew the other one, and we could have expanded it, but it wouldn't have expanded. We didn't think over the next 10 to 15 years, wasn't expandable to the extent we thought we needed. So we started anew, moved a lot of dirt.
Moving a lot of dirt. All right, so let's go back. So as you mentioned, so 5 generations, 5 generations. You were the 5th generation, you and your brother, to lead this company. But going back to the beginning, you're in the adhesive tape business now. How did the company end up, what was the beginning and how did it end up in the tape business? How did it all start?
Right. So in 1880, my great-great-grandfather started with a partner, Shuford Gwynn and Company, and Shuford Gwynn and Company was, spinning cotton into yarn in Caldwell County, on Gunpowder Creek. And so it was a textile business. And at that time, obviously, post-war, most of the textile manufacturing was going on in the North. So this is one of the first facilities that was in the South. And that became, over the many years and generations, of course, Shuford Mills, which some of you may have heard of. At one point, Shuford Mills was in the business of not only spinning yarn, but also the weaving and dyeing business. So it had expanded pretty, substantially over the years. I'm told that it was in the mid 50s that the first bit of tape was manufactured. And the story goes that that tape was viewed as an opportunity for the business to expand into a related market. And you think, well, how's tape related to kind of twine and yarn? And the answer is, the old way of bundling and unitizing things was, of course, with twine and yarn. And tape was a new technology that came about. So it was a real narrow coater that was installed in hickory, and that was the seed that ultimately germinated and became Shurtape. A couple kind of significant developments over the years were, of course, when we spun what was at the time the tape division of Shuford Mills out of the company to become standalone Shurtape. And then, of course, over the years, we exited the textile business altogether, such that we've become strictly a tapes business.
Well, I know you've mentioned the R&D location in the county. You guys invest a lot in technology, and I know adhesive tape in general, I'm sure the process and the product itself has evolved over the years. And so maybe talk a little bit about how the product itself or the process itself has changed.
Yeah, great question. It's changed dramatically, as you can imagine, and that's true of, I think, almost most industries certainly over several generations. And the technology, as you might expect, has become a lot more efficient, a lot more effective in many ways, and much, much cleaner, from both the use of chemicals and VOCs to also a much lower carbon footprint than on a kind of per unit basis anyway. And that's because as the technology has advanced, we've been able to develop other means of curing adhesives. For those chemists out there may know what I mean. That was once done exclusively with heat and solvents. And now we're able to do that with various other technologies. Our latest investment, in fact, uses UV light to cure our adhesives. So it's evolved a great bit. And you're right, we have invested a lot in the technology. I wouldn't represent that we've kind of invented fundamental technologies, process technologies, but we've improved on many of the existing technologies. And that's a lot of course, what's going on over in our R&D centers. We're figuring out how to improve and optimize our processes to deliver pretty unique product features and functionality. So anyway, a lot of investment, like you say, and which has helped, I think, lessen our environmental footprint and at the same time improve our products.
Well, over 50 years, the company has grown leaps and bounds, right? When you were fledgling startup, if you will, pioneering, if you will, in the adhesive tape industry, to all of the acquisitions, the growth, expansions, you know, and moving into different markets, then moving international, supplying international and international locations for manufacturing. Lots of growth over the years. So maybe talk a little bit about what you would consider some of those inflection points of growth and investments over the decades.
Yeah. So Shurtape has grown through a combination of greenfield investment by building facilities, some of which we've already reviewed this just a few minutes ago. But we've also grown through acquisition, a combination. And certainly I would say one of the most significant inflection points, as you call it, in our kind of growth as a company was absolutely when we divested of our textile assets and got really focused on growing the tapes business. And we more or less immediately launched into a pretty significant greenfield capital investment campaign to do what we just talked about, which is advance our technology to kind of next generation technologies, knowing full well that if we didn't do that, we were going to be left behind. So there was significant investment. This is kind of late 90s, early 2000s that where we went on a pretty significant kind of growth spurt, you might say. And then we also around that time started to pursue some acquisitions internationally. As you mentioned, we have a pretty significant footprint in Germany. We have, believe it or not, a significant footprint in China from a production standpoint. And there are a host of other kind of partnerships that we have around the world. Our most significant acquisition by far, however, was when we acquired the consumer tapes business from Henkel, which is a German conglomerate that had decided they were going to get out of the tapes business. And that's, of course, how we added some of the brands you referenced earlier, including the Duck brand.
Yeah, and I've always thought, you know, thinking of product innovations, right? Understanding voice of customer, understanding the problems that they face. And, you know, I thought of frog tape initially, just because of the fact that if you've ever tried to paint a room, you definitely want some frog tape. Masking is fine, but
I think
frog
so.
tape for a very much of an amateur like myself,
Yeah.
especially on trim, you need some frog tape. So maybe talk about product innovations, like how do you get that voice of customer, and any type of innovation. Maybe it's also innovation in the manufacturing process, which you've kind of alluded to already with UV lighting and curing. So just a little bit more about innovation.
Sure. Well, it's like you say, VOC in this context, voice of customer is essential. We do a ton in the R&D center that you pass on Highland Avenue that was once a distribution center. A lot of what's in there is application testing, some of which is in itself kind of innovative. We've developed our own proprietary kind of processes, if you will, for testing the various applications of the tape to see if we can come up with, you know, new opportunities, approaches, and enhancements to our products. And then, as you might imagine, we get a lot of our product into consumers' hands, users' hands, painters' hands, to get their feedback and understand what is it exactly they're looking for, and how can we potentially address some of the pain points that they might have. So it's very deliberate. We invest a lot of time and money in innovation. As you mentioned, some of that's kind of process innovation. And some of that, of course, is the kind of innovation you're referring to with frog tape, which is coming up with new ways to solve old problems. And in some cases, actually, even identifying that problem exists. The crazy thing about frog tape is if you interviewed, a couple dozen users of masking tape, not one of them before frog tape would have told you that paint bleed was a problem they struggled with. They might talk about, tearing wallboard, shredding of the tape off the roll, whatever it might be. But it was kind of presumed by the users that, paint bleed was just a fact of life, and therefore not even something that had been identified by them. But we were able, actually in partnership with an inventor in Minnesota, to identify that as an opportunity. And as you suggest, ended up with a patent on the frog technology, which I can share with everybody since it is kind of available for you to read on Google Patents. And that is, we simply, with pressure, impregnate, you might say, super absorbent into the side of the tape. So we have a proprietary manufacturing process right there in Hickory where we do that. And we basically turn the side of the tape into a diaper. And it absorbs any kind of water-based paints that it comes in contact with.
Yes. Yes. So go check it out. If you're DIYing it when you're at home in quarantine, which many people are, then
Yes.
yes, try it. Try it. You'll become a believer. Okay. So Stephen, research says that fifth generation companies are extremely rare because the risk, really it says third generation is kind of that key, right?
Yeah.
Third generation is where it's the company is either sold or that say the next generation doesn't want to step up into leadership. That's a really critical point. And so you guys being fifth generation, extremely rare. So talk about that decision making within your family, and in believing in generational leadership and the fact that you and Jim wanted to step up and to lead the company as fifth generation. And maybe some examples of why you feel or that some companies aren't as successful with the succession of the generational leadership.
Yeah, good question. I can think of two primary reasons, at least that I assign to our ability to, kind of keep the family ownership intact, you might say. One is that I think there's a lot of evidence throughout the generations and over the years that we've always promoted talent within the organization, whether or not it was family talent. So at various times throughout the last couple, dozen years, there have been non-family leaders of the business. And as you referenced earlier, very recently, I promoted somebody into the CEO role who's not a family member. So I think striking the right balance between family-led and family-owned, and at times in the right situations with the right talent, having some might say audacity to actually put somebody in charge, that's a unique talent that can take the company where it needs to go next is, I think, one of the key reasons we've been able to be successful. And then I would also suggest that I think there've been a couple occasions, at least over the last couple of generations, where ownership has been consolidated at the company, right? So, and maybe we can speak about that a little more later, but I think that's pretty important because I think you often see situations in family businesses where the ownership group is not a good fit for the needs of the business in terms of the strategy that needs to be pursued and what that might require from ownership. And so those are opportunities, if you can avail yourself of them to change the ownership, to consolidate the ownership typically. And if certain shareholders had liquidity needs and others are prepared to go for, like the example I gave, a significant round of capital investment, that you don't get the mismatch in effect between kind of ownership and leadership of the business.
Stephen, this whole concept of succession planning, I feel that this is a critical issue, particularly in our community right now. I've just personally, I'd say 5 to even 6 different inquiries over the last year of companies that are in the process of trying to formulate plans for succession. You see, employee ownership models. You see complete, to sell off the company and the assets. Like you said, bring in the first non-family leader. They're more than likely there's someone out there that's grappling with this type of issue themselves. We hosted a webinar recently that's also on our YouTube channel with the SBTDC, the Small Business Technology Development Center. They specialize in assisting companies in formulating succession plans. But you having this experience, why don't you share, if someone's dealing with a similar issue. They're trying to decide what's next. What advice would you give them?
Yeah. Well, with respect to operational leadership, I would go back to what I said earlier, which is make sure, or my advice would be to make sure that you're looking at your entire pool of talent. And it may or may not be junior that's ready for that next kind of leadership opportunity. Doesn't necessarily mean that junior won't one day be the right leader for the business, but in a given period of time, it may be that there's somebody else within the organization that is in a better position to provide the leadership that's needed. Ownership, for all kinds of reasons that I referenced earlier, can be a little tougher. But I think it's essential. I guess the advice I would give would be address it, ask the questions.
Yeah.
I think so often those that I know in family business, and including some who obviously were not able to successfully transition generationally, they never asked the question. They never created a safe and place for those critical questions to be asked about what are you looking for out of the business and what do you need, and how can we move this forward in a way that makes sense for everybody. So I think being bold enough to have the conversations.
Yes.
Sometimes in particular with the founder of the business, there's a lot of
I bet.
yeah.
I bet.
I hear a lot about that, the founder owner that doesn't want to let go, and
Yeah,
that doesn't want to have the conversation. Nobody wants to talk
that's
to
right.
dad about, how we're going to address this succession issue. I would say find a way.
Great. Great advice. Great advice. So what you've been at Shurtape, let's see, well, now vice chairman of STM, but you were CEO of Shurtape for 10 years, recently transitioned out of that role. But you've been there for 23 years. So
Right.
talk about what are some of your most impactful lessons as a leader in the company that you've learned over the 23 years?
Yeah. Lessons in leadership, right? You're gonna detect a theme here, because the first one I'm going to go to is, identify and promote talent.
Mhm.
You want to create an environment that's a meritocracy, and that people with the right skills in the right place have an opportunity to advance within the company. So first and foremost, I think I'd offer that. I think a corollary to that is deal with the non-performers. Kind of no dead weight, deal with the dead weight, make sure that when people look around them in your environment, your company, that they see that, the right kind of talent and the people that fit the culture are the ones that are advancing, and the ones that don't, do not, or maybe end up working elsewhere. So I think those are two of the, probably most critical lessons. I think, and this is a tough one, particularly for a lot of family businesses. That is, you do have to have an appetite for risk. And I think often that it needs to include a financial risk, right? By borrowing. I know there are a lot of family companies out there that kind of have kind of a no debt kind of principle that maybe date back to whomever one day. But I must say that without significant kind of risk appetite, and including some borrowing in the right, calculated circumstances, is pretty important, because capital flows in this day and age, with all the private equity out there and certainly the public markets, you're competing against companies that have risk capital and risk appetite. So, if you're not, able to muster, I guess, the appetite for a little bit of risk, I think it'll be challenging in this environment. Just with the capital flows the way they are, and how available it is to those that are willing to take those risks. So those would be some of the maybe takeaways I'd.
Good advice. All right, Stephen, to wrap this up, let's talk a little bit about vision. Shurtape 10, 15, 20 years from now, what's your cast your vision for us today?
In terms of what our company is going to look like?
Sure. Yes.
Um, I can be very specific or more general. I would say that our newest investment in venture um, is an acquisition we made in 2017 of a business. You referenced it in your introduction, what we call OEM tapes. And for folks out there, there are a lot of products that you buy off the shelf, as we've referenced here today, and our industrial distributors, buy it in pallet upon pallet of packaging tape or what have you for use in their various applications. But there's a whole universe out there of OEM tapes, and these are products that actually get incorporated into products that people use, whether they're cars or electronics, medical devices, or what have you. There's a lot of tape in your iPhone. We often tell people, and people don't think about that, but tape is you know is a bonding device. And we make plenty of double-sided tapes, and you take one side, you stick it to another. Some of those bonds can be absolutely permanent and just as strong as a mechanical fastener, such as a screw or a rivet or something. So we're seeing a lot more use of pressure sensitives in applications where you traditionally saw the use of mechanical fasteners. Examples I'll give you are like house wraps and things like that, which are traditionally
Right.
and very labor intensively nailed up to plywood siding. A lot of these products now are becoming peel and stick type products. So we see a lot of opportunity for the business to expand into these OEM applications where tape is either incorporated into the product, or in many cases replacing the applications where mechanical fasteners may have been used before. And so those are some of the areas we're making investments. And so therefore, I'd very much like to tell you that those are wise investments, and that our future is going to include a great deal of growth in that particular channel.
That's great. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for spending time with me today and for sharing your insight. If you're just tuning in and you're catching the replay, or you're still hanging in there and watching with us live, you just heard from Stephen Shuford. He's the vice chairman, STB Shurtape Technologies. We talked a lot about succession planning. We talked about innovation, product innovation. We talked about their expansion and growth, their company's history. So if you haven't seen the whole thing, just wait a couple minutes. This will be go on the replay side, and then you'll be able to watch it all. So again, Stephen, thank you for just your investment in our community and our chamber. And thanks for taking the time to be with me here today.
Absolutely, Lindsay. I was happy to do it. Thanks again for the opportunity. You're good at this.
Oh, well, necessity is often a driver for many things, right? So again, thank you. And Stephen and I, those of you who don't know, we serve on the K64 board together. So our very transformational workforce or talent development initiative in our community. He's also on the board for our partners at the Catawba County Economic Development Corporation. So thank you for always leaning in to this community. Our next session, you guys, it's going to be Warehouse Distillery. So this is a fairly new business, but family owned. Two sisters and their parents came together and they started Warehouse Distillery. So Andy Foss and Bailey Setzer will be our guests. So they are the co-owners. Also, I think one deals with marketing, one's more strategic, but their parents are invested with them. So it's pretty unique, fairly new business, a distillery in Newton. So tune in on October the 22nd at the lunch hour for that interview. That you don't want to miss what they have to say. They've done a pretty phenomenal job shifting production. They went from bourbon, and they were working on their gin, to hand sanitizer to respond to the pandemic. So hopefully you'll tune in then October 22nd at 12 p.m. for that interview. Thank you all, those viewers that tuned in live. Thank you for stopping in and watching the replay. If you're coming for the replay, we ask you to comment and engage with this so that we can have as many people to see this as possible. I want to say thank you again to our sponsor, so Hickory Real Estate Group. Thank you very much for enabling us to do this. And with that being said, hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.